The diplomatic station floated in neutral space, a massive structure built by 17 different alien species over 2 centuries. Inside its main chamber, Ambassador Minu sat perfectly still at the human delegation table. His hands were folded on the smooth surface before him, and his face showed nothing. But inside, his heart was breaking. Across the circular chamber, the representatives sat in their elevated seats. They were large creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. The High Commander leaned forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute confidence. "Your species is young," the commander said. "You do not understand how the galaxy works. Strong civilizations take what they need. Weak civilizations give it or die." Minyu took a slow breath. Behind him, Captain stood at attention in her military uniform. He could feel the anger radiating from her, but she remained silent. That was the agreement. Let diplomacy work first. "We came here to discuss peace," Minyu said carefully, "not to hear philosophy about strength. You have destroyed 3 of our colony worlds. Millions of our people are dead. We want this to stop." The commander made a sound that might have been laughter. Around the chamber, representatives from 40 other alien species watched in silence. None of them moved to help. None of them spoke in humanity's defense. They simply watched, as they had been watching for 3 years while they took human worlds one by one. Minyu activated the holographic display. Images filled the center of the chamber. A planet called New Sol, green and beautiful, covered in cities and farms. Then the same planet burning. Warships in orbit firing down onto the surface. Cities turning to glass under the heat. Oceans boiling. 8 million people dying in 17 hours. "This is not war," Minyu said quietly. "This is murder. We are not soldiers you killed in battle. We are civilians, families, children." The commander waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Acceptable casualties in territorial disputes. Your species built colonies in space we claimed. You should have asked permission first." "That space was empty when we arrived," Captain said suddenly. Her voice was hard. "Your charts showed no presence within 50 light years. We followed every rule of the Galactic Council." "And the Council has made its decision," the commander replied. He gestured to the silent alien representatives surrounding them. "Notice how none of them speak for you. They understand reality. You do not." Minyu felt something cold settling in his chest. He had been a diplomat for 30 years. He had negotiated treaties, prevented wars, built bridges between species. He believed in words, in reason, in finding common ground. But looking at the commander, he saw something he had never seen before. Not hatred, not anger, just complete, absolute dismissal. To the humanity was nothing, less than nothing. "What do you want?" Minyu asked. The commander smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. 12 more systems, your colonies in the outer rim. You will evacuate them within 1 standard month and hand over all facilities intact. In return, we will not destroy your." The chamber fell silent. Even the aliens who had been whispering to each other stopped. "You're asking us to surrender 1/3 of our territory," said from his position at the technical station. He was the strategic coordinator, and his voice shook slightly. "Those systems house 2 billion people." "Then move them," the commander said. "Or don't. We care little either way." Minyu looked at the data pad in his hand. Before coming here, he had spoken with Earth's government. They had given him clear instructions: get peace at any reasonable cost. But this wasn't reasonable. This was extinction in slow motion. "And if we refuse?" Minyu asked. The commander touched a control panel. The holographic display changed. Now it showed Earth itself, the blue and green world that had given birth to humanity. And surrounding it like a metal cage were 12,000 warships. The image was current, real time. They were already there. "You have 48 hours, the commander said. "Accept our terms or we demonstrate what happened to New Sol on a much larger scale." The chief military advisor stood up slowly. She was an older woman with white hair and scars on her hands from the colony wars. "You're threatening to kill 10 billion people," she said quietly. "Our entire—" "Yes," the commander said simply. "It is a very clear threat, very simple. Even your young species should understand it." Minyu looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the representatives of the Empire whose merchants traded with human colonies every day. They looked away. He saw the Assembly who had signed mutual defense pacts with Earth. They studied their data pads. He saw species who had eaten human food, enjoyed human art, sent their children to study at human universities. None of them met his eyes. "The Council has nothing to say?" Minyu asked. Chancellor, a floating creature surrounded by a containment field, finally spoke. His voice was tired. "The Council cannot interfere in territorial disputes between member species. That is our law." "Even when one species is committing genocide?" demanded. "They are very powerful," said quietly, "and humanity is very new. These are facts. The Council must consider the stability of the entire galaxy." Minyu understood then. They were alone. They had always been alone. The Galactic Council was a club for the strong, and humanity had been invited only because they were useful. Now that being friends with humans was dangerous, the friendship ended. He stood up slowly and gathered his data pads. "Then these talks are finished," he said. 48 hours, the commander reminded him. "Choose quickly." The human delegation left the chamber in silence. They walked through the diplomatic station's corridors, past aliens who stepped aside and would not look at them. They boarded their shuttle and departed, and only when they were safely away did anyone speak. Captain opened her command pad. It showed new orders transmitted from Earth, encrypted with the highest security protocols. She read them twice to be sure. Then she looked at Minyu. "You need to see this," she said. Minyu read the orders. His hands started to shake, not from fear, from something else, something cold and patient and absolutely certain. "They left us no choice," he said quietly. Nodded, she opened a communication channel to Earth. "This is Captain, peace talks have failed. Authorization code follows. Initiate Prometheus protocol." Far away, on Earth and in secret facilities scattered across human space, people received the message. They had been waiting for years, hoping it would never come. But they had prepared anyway, because humans always prepared for the worst. Admiral sat in his command center beneath the Pacific Ocean and pressed a single button. Across the galaxy, 800 human warships received the same order simultaneously. Their transponders shut off. Their communication systems went dark. Every tracking beacon stopped broadcasting. In 18 seconds, humanity vanished from every sensor in the galaxy. "Now," Admiral said to his command staff, "we show them what we really are." Fleet advanced toward Earth like a metal tide, 12,000 warships, each one larger than a city. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship and watched the tactical display with satisfaction. In 72 hours, they would reach Earth. The human would see their fleet and understand that resistance was pointless. "Any response from the humans?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing, Admiral. Complete silence from all human frequencies." Nodded fear. They know they cannot win. But something felt wrong. The officer was checking his instruments with increasing concern. "Admiral, I'm not just receiving no messages. I'm detecting no signals at all. No tracking beacons. No navigational broadcasts. No commercial traffic. Nothing." "Elaborate," demanded. "Sir, 3 hours ago we could track 800 human military vessels. Now we can't find a single one. They're not jamming us. There's simply nothing there to detect." Felt a small spike of concern but pushed it away. "They're hiding, running to there like frightened children. It changes nothing." Across the galaxy, other species were watching humanity's final hours with morbid curiosity. They had monitoring stations positioned at a safe distance. The assembly was recording everything for their historical archives. 17 different civilizations had sensors pointed at human space, wanting to document exactly how the newcomers would die. But what they saw confused them. Every human vessel had simply disappeared from sensors, not destroyed, not fleeing, just gone. On Earth, 10 billion people looked up at the sky and waited. They had seen the broadcasts. Everyone knew what was coming. The government had told them to remain calm, to trust in their military, but people were terrified. Parents held their children. Old people called family members on colony worlds, saying goodbye. Then every screen on Earth showed the same image. Admiral appeared, wearing his full dress uniform. He looked tired but calm. "People of Earth," he said, "people of our colonies. In 70 hours an enemy fleet will arrive at our. They expect to find us afraid. They expect to see us beg. They expect us to surrender or die." He paused, and something like a smile crossed his face. "They're going to be disappointed. What comes next is not war, it is mathematics. We have calculated exactly what is required and we will deliver exactly that. Nothing more, nothing less, stand ready." The broadcast ended. People looked at each other in confusion. Mathematics, what did that mean? In the asteroid belt beyond Mars, a facility that officially did not exist powered up its systems. Doctor stood in the central control room, surrounded by screens showing data that would have meant nothing to most people. But to her, they were beautiful. 30 years of research, 20 years of testing, 5 years of production, all leading to this moment. "Status?" she asked. Her assistant, a young man named, read from his station. "All swarm units are online. 47 billion individual drones. Dimensional fold generators are ready. Targeting solutions have been loaded." "Any detection from alien sensors?" "None. They still think we're primitive." Doctor thought about that. Primitive. Humans had been called that so many times. When they first achieved faster-than-light travel, the other species had laughed. Human ships were slow and clumsy. When humans asked to join the Galactic Council, they were given the worst territories, the trade routes. When humans tried to share their technology, they were dismissed as having nothing valuable to offer. The other species had made a mistake. They had assumed that because human technology looked different, it must be inferior. They had never considered that maybe humans were hiding things, that maybe humans had learned to keep secrets. "Release the swarm," Doctor ordered. Across the asteroid belt, in hidden facilities built into rocks that looked completely natural, doors opened. What emerged looked like silver dust, catching the distant sunlight. Each piece of dust was actually a drone smaller than a human fingernail. They had no weapons, no armor. They were just tiny machines with very specific programming. And there were 47 billion of them. The swarm dispersed in every direction, moving faster than any ship, too small to be detected by conventional sensors. Within hours, they would reach their destinations. Within days, they would be in position throughout territory. Across the galaxy, sat in a small apartment on a neutral trading station. Officially, she was a merchant dealing in human art and literature. Actually, she was an intelligence operative, and she had been listening to alien communications for 5 years. Now those communications were becoming frantic. The assembly had lost contact with their monitoring station near Earth, not destroyed. The station was there, functioning normally. It just wasn't receiving any data because there was nothing to monitor. Earth was gone. Not exploded, not reduced to rubble. The planet had simply vanished from space. The moon was still there. The sun still burned. All the inner planets were where they should be. But Earth, with its 10 billion people, was nowhere to be found. "How does an entire planet disappear?" heard one commander asking another. "Could they have destroyed it already?" "No, there's no debris field, no energy signature. It's like someone reached out and erased it from existence." Smiled slightly and encrypted a message to her handlers. The dimensional fold was working perfectly. Earth hadn't gone anywhere. It was exactly where it had always been. But it now existed slightly outside normal space, in a pocket dimension that would protect it from any attack. The technology had been theoretical until 3 years ago. The New Soul Massacre had given Earth's government the motivation to turn theory into reality very quickly. On the flagship, Admiral was no longer satisfied. He was concerned. His fleet had reached Earth's solar system, and the planet was gone. His science officers had no explanation. Could the humans have evacuated everyone? He demanded. Sir, to evacuate 10 billion people would require thousands of ships and months of time. We saw no such movement. Then where are they? No one had an answer. Ordered his ships to spread out and search. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe the humans were using some kind of cloaking technology. They would find Earth, and when they did, the bombardment would begin. But in the back of his mind, a small voice was asking questions. If the humans could hide an entire planet, what else could they do? And if they could do this, why had they seemed so weak before? The truth was starting to dawn on him, but it was too late. The swarm had already reached the first targets. Tiny drones, each one no bigger than a grain of sand, began attaching themselves to power systems, to ship hulls, to communication arrays. They did nothing yet, just waited. Across human space, on every colony world, people watched their leaders make the same speech. Different faces, but the same words. We did not want this. We tried peace. They chose war. Now they will learn what humanity does when you take away all other options. The colonies began their own disappearing act. One by one, human settlements faded from sensors as dimensional fold generators activated. To any outside observer, it looked like humanity was being erased from the galaxy. In reality, they were just stepping sideways into spaces the other species didn't know existed. Captain stood on the bridge of her ship, which was also hidden in folded space. She looked at her crew. They were young people, most of them. They had joined the military to protect their homes. Now they were about to do something that no human military had ever done before. All ships, she broadcast on the encrypted command channel. Prometheus Protocol is active. You have your targets. You have your timelines. Remember what Admiral said. This is mathematics, precise, calculated, no mistakes. Hundreds of ships, invisible to all sensors, moved into position around territory. They carried no missiles, no energy weapons, just the swarm and instructions on where to deploy it. The galaxy held its breath, watching and waiting for humanity to die. They had no idea that humanity wasn't dying. Humanity was doing something much worse. They were getting to work. The first supply convoy disappeared on a Tuesday. 17 cargo ships carrying food, medicine, and industrial supplies to their colony in the outer sectors simply stopped reporting. No distress signals, no debris. Admiral sent 3 warships to investigate. Those ships found the convoy drifting in space, intact but completely dead. Every system was offline, reactors cold, life support gone. The crews were still alive, floating in their ships, confused and terrified. When rescue teams boarded, they found something impossible. Every power source on every ship had been taken apart, not destroyed, disassembled, piece by piece, component by component, with surgical precision. It would have taken teams of engineers weeks to do this. It had happened in less than an hour, and no one had seen who or what did it. Sabotage, insisted. Human agents must have infiltrated the convoy. But his intelligence officer shook his head. Sir, we scanned those ships before they left, nothing unusual, and our boarding parties found no traces of any intruders, no tool marks, no evidence of cutting or welding. The components just came apart. Ordered increased security on all supply routes. It didn't matter. On Thursday, a shipyard in the inner systems went dark. 7 billion tons of infrastructure, 300 ships under construction, thousands of workers. Everything stopped simultaneously. Reactors, fusion plants, even backup batteries, all dead in the same instant. Technicians rushed to diagnose the problem. What they found made no sense. Every power system had been deactivated at the molecular level. The fuel was still there. The components were intact, but something had altered the basic structures so they simply couldn't produce energy anymore. How is this possible? The facility director demanded. No one could answer. It took 3 weeks and a complete rebuild to get the shipyard working again. By then, 4 more facilities had failed the same way. On Saturday, a colony world lost power, all of it. Every reactor on the planet, every solar collector, every geothermal plant. 7 billion woke up in complete darkness. Temperatures started dropping immediately. Panic spread as people realized their survival systems were failing. This time humans revealed themselves, not with weapons, with a message. Every communication device on the planet that still had battery power received the same broadcast. It was Admiral again, speaking calmly. Your military attacked our civilians. 8 million died on New Sol. We calculated that this gives us the right to respond proportionally. We could kill 7 billion of you right now. Your life support will fail in 72 hours, but we won't do that. We're not like you. The screen showed schematics of the planet's power systems. Your leaders will find instructions in their government databases. Follow them exactly. You can restore power in 48 hours. Your people will be cold and scared, but they will live. This is a demonstration. We want you to understand what we can do and what we choose not to do. The broadcast ended. Engineers followed the instructions and, impossibly, power began returning. Whatever had stopped the energy systems could be reversed. The humans had left them a way to fix it. This somehow made it worse. The humans weren't even trying to kill them. This was mercy. And mercy from someone you thought was weak is the most frightening thing in the universe. Commander watched the colony world from his cloaked ship. Around him, his crew monitored the swarm's operations. The tiny drones were everywhere now throughout space. Trillions of them, each one smaller than a grain of sand, working together like a vast, invisible organism. Status on industrial targets, asked. 70% of manufacturing is compromised, his tactical officer reported. The swarm is following the protocols exactly. No deaths, no permanent damage, just systematic disassembly. Military capabilities. Declining rapidly. They can't build new ships, can't repair old ones. Supply chains are collapsing. In 2 weeks, the military will be unable to sustain offensive operations. Nodded, this was the plan, not destruction. Dismantlement. Make the enemy unable to fight without actually fighting them. It was elegant in a terrible way. His communication officer suddenly sat up straight. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from High Command. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. The face that appeared was Admiral, but he looked nothing like the confident commander from the peace talks. His skin had lost its shimmer. His eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. To the human forces, said, we request immediate negotiations. We surrender. Unconditionally, please respond. Commander looked at his crew. They were young people who had lost friends and family on New Sol. They had every right to feel satisfied by this. But instead, they just looked tired. Should we respond, sir? The communication officer asked. No, said, let them wait. We have more targets to process. Across the galaxy, other species were beginning to understand what was happening. They weren't being attacked. They were being erased from functionality, and the humans were doing it without firing a single shot. The assembly called an emergency meeting. The Empire scrambled to review their own security systems. Species that had never worried about humans suddenly became very interested in what humanity had been hiding. Overseer, head of military intelligence, sat in his office and stared at the reports flooding in. He had been analyzing human capabilities for 5 years. He had assured the High Command that humanity was weak, their technology inferior, their military insignificant. He had been completely wrong. Humans hadn't been weak. They had been hiding. While they were building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humans had been developing something else entirely. Nanotechnology, dimensional engineering, swarm intelligence. Technology so advanced and so different from standard galactic approaches that no one had even thought to look for them. And humans had deployed all of it with absolutely no warning and perfect coordination. This wasn't a desperate last stand. This was a planned operation, years in preparation, which meant humans had been expecting this. They had known the galaxy would eventually attack them, and they had prepared accordingly. Pulled up human casualty reports from the last 5 years, millions dead in the colony wars, billions more displaced. He thought about how human diplomatic missions had always seemed so earnest, so genuine in their desire for peace. They probably had been genuine, but they had also been realistic. They knew peace might fail. So they had built weapons in secret, not weapons to conquer, weapons to terrify. He drafted a report to the Galactic Council. It took him 3 hours to find the right words. When he was done, he read it one more time. Humanity is not fighting a war. They are conducting an extinction event. They have the capability to dismantle any civilization without killing a single person. They can turn entire species back to the Stone Age while leaving everyone alive to suffer through it. They can do this to anyone, anywhere, and we cannot stop them because we cannot find them. He paused, then added one more line. We attacked them because we thought they were weak. We were wrong. They weren't weak. They were patient, and patience is far more dangerous than strength. He sent the report and sat back in his chair. Outside his window, he could see the planet's surface. Lights were flickering as power systems struggled to stay online. The Empire, proud and mighty for 3,000 years, was falling apart in less than 2 weeks. And the humans still hadn't fired a shot. Somewhere in the asteroid belt near Earth, Doctor monitored the swarm's operations. The drones were performing beyond expectations. Every single one was following its programming perfectly. Disassemble, disable, demonstrate capability, but do not kill. Doctor, her assistant said quietly, we could end this. We could deactivate their entire empire permanently. Make sure they never threaten anyone again. Looked at him. He was 26 years old. His parents had died on New Sol. Yes, she said, we could, and that's exactly why we won't. The goal isn't revenge. It's deterrence. We need the alive and functional enough to tell everyone what happened. We need the galaxy to see that we can dismantle civilizations but choose not to. Fear of capability is more lasting than fear of destruction. Does that make it better? Asked. That we're doing this just to scare people? No, admitted. It doesn't, but it keeps our people alive, and right now that's all that matters. She turned back to her screens, watching billions of tiny machines doing their terrible, precise work, and wondered if this was what victory felt like. It didn't feel good. It just felt necessary. And that was somehow worse. The Galactic Council chamber was silent for the first time in 300 years. 47 species had gathered for emergency session, and not one representative was speaking. They were all watching the holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed the Empire, or what was left of it. 30% of their infrastructure was gone, not destroyed, just stopped working. Factories stood idle. Ships drifted powerless in space. Colonies were dark. The mighty military which had conquered 12 species in the last century was scattered and helpless. And humanity still hadn't fired a single weapon. Chancellor floated in his containment field, trying to understand what he was seeing. He had lived for 400 years. He had witnessed wars, plagues, natural disasters, but he had never seen anything like this. An entire empire being systematically erased from functionality by an enemy no one could see or fight. How long until the collapse completely? Asked the representative, her voice shaking slightly. Our analysts predict 3 more weeks, replied. After that, they won't have the resources to maintain their civilization at any meaningful level. Billions will starve. Their currency will collapse. Their government will fragment. And the humans, asked the assembly speaker, where are they? Unknown, Earth remains hidden. Their fleet remains undetectable. We've been scanning with every sensor we have. There's nothing. A new voice spoke up. It was the representative from the sphere, a species known for their advanced technology. I've analyzed the patterns of the system failures. The precision is remarkable. Whatever is doing this is working at the molecular level, possibly smaller. This is nanotechnology far beyond anything we've developed. How long have the humans had this capability? Someone asked. Unknown, but I would estimate decades. This level of sophistication doesn't happen overnight. The chamber fell silent again. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been sitting in council meetings for 10 years, seeming weak and primitive, while hiding technology that made them potentially the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They lied to us, the representative said bitterly. No, corrected. They simply didn't tell us everything, which legally they had no obligation to do. But they made us think they were helpless. We made ourselves think that, said quietly. We saw their slow ships and their small military and assumed we knew everything about them. That was our mistake. The door to the chamber opened. Every alien representative turned to look. A human walked in, alone, wearing a simple black diplomatic uniform. This wasn't Ambassador Minu. This was someone new. I am Ambassador, the human said. His voice was calm but cold. I'm here to discuss terms. Terms? The representative stood up. You're destroying the empire. Yes, said simply. We calculated it was necessary. He walked to the center of the chamber without asking permission. He touched a control panel and the holographic display changed. Now it showed images from New Sol, cities burning, people dying, children running from fires they couldn't escape. 8 million of our people, said, dead in 17 hours. The called it acceptable casualties. We decided to show them what acceptable looks like from our perspective. You're committing genocide, someone shouted. Turn to face them. No one has died. Check your reports. 0 casualties. We've dismantled their infrastructure, but we've carefully ensured no one gets killed. We're not like them, but we needed everyone to understand what we can do. He touched the panel again. The display now showed images from across the galaxy. The capital, the research stations, and in each image, barely visible, were tiny markers showing swarm positions. The chamber erupted in panic. You've infiltrated all of our systems, Chancellor demanded. Yes, said. We've had access for years. We know your ship designs, your weapons systems, your communication protocols. We've mapped every major installation in the galaxy. We've been inside your network since first contact. That's an act of war, multiple species shouted simultaneously. No, corrected. It's an act of survival. We're a young species in a galaxy that sees us as weak. We had to prepare for the day someone would attack us. That day came. Now you're seeing what we prepared. He pulled up another display. This one showed statistical analysis of every major galactic civilization. Vulnerabilities, weak points, critical infrastructure nodes. It was intelligence gathering on a scale that should have been impossible. We know everything about you, continued. Where your planets are, how your societies function, what you need to survive, and we've positioned our assets accordingly, not to attack, to deter, but the capability exists. Stepped into the chamber behind him. She was head of humanity's psychological warfare division, and her presence made several representatives flinch. Let me make this very clear, said. We can do to any of you what we're doing to the... We can erase your civilization without killing anyone. You'll just wake up one day and nothing will work anymore. Your ships, your computers, your power grids, all gone, and you won't be able to stop us because you won't even know we're there." "This is terrorism," someone shouted. "No," replied calmly. "Terrorism is bombing cities full of civilians. That's what they did to New Seoul. What we're doing is demonstrating capability. There's a difference." Chancellor tried to restore order. "What do you want?" he asked. "What we always wanted," replied. "To be left alone. We never asked for much, just our own space, the right to exist peacefully. But you all sat here 3 weeks ago and watched the threaten to destroy Earth. None of you helped. None of you even spoke up." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. "So now we're making sure you understand the cost of attacking humanity. We're showing you that we can fight back. More than that, we're showing you that we can win without fighting. We can just turn off your civilizations like switching off a light." "But you haven't destroyed them completely," the representative observed. "Why not?" "Because we're not monsters," said. "We could erase them. We could do it today, but we won't. Because the goal isn't revenge, it's deterrence. We need the alive to tell everyone what happened when they attacked us." He pulled up a final display. It showed a timeline of humanity's preparations. Research programs started decades ago, hidden facilities, secret deployments, all of it carefully hidden from galactic surveillance. "We've been planning for this since the day we joined the Galactic Council," explained. "We looked at galactic history. We saw how new species get treated. We saw the pattern. Wait until they're established. Then attack them when they think they're safe. We decided to make sure that when it happened to us, we'd be ready." "You've been living in fear all this time?" asked quietly. "Yes," admitted. "Every day, every council meeting, every trade agreement. We were always waiting for someone to attack us, and we were always preparing our response. You saw us as paranoid, we saw it as realistic." A communications officer stepped forward with a data pad. "We're prepared to offer terms. They will surrender unconditionally. They'll return all occupied human territory. They'll pay reparations. And they'll serve as an example to the rest of the galaxy." "And the rest of us?" the representative asked. "What happens to our civilizations?" "Nothing," said. "If you leave us alone, our swarm positions are purely defensive. We won't activate them unless we're attacked, but they'll stay in place, permanently. Consider them insurance against future aggression." "You're holding the entire galaxy hostage," someone protested. "No," corrected. "We're protecting ourselves from a galaxy that already proved it will do nothing while we're threatened with extinction. There's a difference." He walked toward the exit, then paused. "One more thing, we're opening up human space to trade again. We want normal relations with everyone, but our borders are now absolute. Any unauthorized ship that enters human territory will be disabled immediately. Not destroyed, just turned off. We'll tow you back out and you can restart your systems, but that's your only warning." "How can we trust you?" asked. Looked at him for a long moment. "You can't, just like we can't trust you, but we can coexist. They forced us to show our teeth. Now everyone knows we have them. Hopefully that means we won't have to use them again." He left the chamber. The alien representative sat in shocked silence for several minutes before the shouting began. Fear, anger, accusations, but underneath it all was something else, something that changed everything. Respect. Humanity had been the galaxy's and weakest member. Now they were the most terrifying, not because they had weapons, because they had proven they didn't need weapons. They could dismantle civilizations with technology no one else had, deployed with precision no one else could match. And they had done it while losing no one, which meant they could do it again, anytime to anyone. The balance of power had shifted. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. 6 months after the peace talks collapsed, Ambassador Minu stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy station and looked out at Earth. The planet was visible again, back in normal space, blue and green and beautiful. Ships moved freely in orbit now, both human and alien vessels. Trade had resumed. Diplomatic channels were open. But everything was different. "It still feels strange," Captain said, standing beside him. She was in civilian clothes now, temporarily assigned to diplomatic security. "Seeing alien ships so close to Earth again." "They're afraid to come any closer," Minu observed. "Notice how they all stay at the designated boundary, exactly at the line, never crossing it." Nodded. Every alien ship maintained precisely the distance in the new treaties, not because they trusted humanity, because they were terrified of what would happen if they didn't. Below them, in the station's conference room, Admiral was meeting with representatives from 17 different species. Minu could watch the proceedings on a monitor. The Admiral looked tired. He had aged 10 years in 6 months. "The Empire has been dissolved," was saying. "Their territory is now divided into 12 independent sectors under provisional human oversight. They'll regain self-governance when we determine they no longer pose a threat to anyone." The alien representatives nodded silently. No one argued, no one protested, they just accepted it. "Additionally," continued, "humanity is withdrawing 90% of our swarm assets from alien territories. The remaining 10% will stay in place around critical infrastructure as a security measure. They're inactive. They'll only respond if human space is threatened." More silent nodding. "However," said, his voice becoming harder, "we need to be very clear about something. What happened to that can happen to anyone. We proved we have the capability. We proved we have the will to use it if necessary, but we prefer not to. We want peace. We want trade. We want to be part of the galactic community." He stood up, looking at each representative. "But we will never again be the species that sits quietly while others debate whether we deserve to exist. Is that understood?" "Yes, Admiral," came the replies, some more hesitant than others. The meeting ended. The representatives filed out quickly, none of them making eye contact with. He sat down heavily in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands. Later that day, Minu found him in the station's garden, a small indoor park that gave the illusion of being on a planet. Was sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. "You look like you need this," Minu said, handing him a cup of tea. "Thank you," took it but didn't drink. "Did we do the right thing?" "You're asking me. I'm the diplomat who failed to keep the peace." "You didn't fail. Peace was never possible. They were always going to attack us." Minu sat down beside him. "Maybe, but what we did in response, what we became, I'm not sure I recognize us anymore." "We survived," said. "That was the goal." "At what cost?" They sat in silence for a while. Finally said, "I got a message from Doctor this morning. The swarm is being scaled back. Most of the units are being deactivated and recycled. She says we can't keep that much capability deployed. It's too tempting." "Tempting to use it. Tempting to rely on it. She's right. If we keep the swarm fully operational, we'll start thinking of it as a solution to every problem. We'll become the thing we were afraid of." Minu thought about that. "So we're choosing to be vulnerable again." "Not vulnerable, careful, there's a difference." Finally took a sip of his tea. "We'll maintain enough capability to defend ourselves, but we're not going to be the galaxy's nightmare. That's not who we want to be." Across the station, in a secure facility, Doctor was briefing a group of young scientists. They were the next generation, the ones who would inherit humanity's terrible knowledge. "The swarm was necessary," she told them. "We built it to survive, and it worked. But now you need to understand something important. The weapons we create define who we become. We made something that could dismantle civilizations. We proved we could do it. Now we have to prove we have the wisdom not to." A young woman raised her hand. But what if someone attacks us again? Then we respond proportionally, said. That's the key word. Proportionally. We don't destroy entire empires because one ship crosses our border. We don't erase civilizations because we're afraid. We calculate exactly what's needed and do that. Nothing more. How do we know where the line is? Another student asked. We don't. That's the burden we carry. Every decision will be difficult. Every response will require judgment. But that's what separates us from they destroyed because they could. We defended because we had to. The difference matters. She pulled up a hologram showing the current state of galactic relations. Human space was clearly marked, surrounded by buffer zones. Other species had their territories. Everything was organized and peaceful. But the map also showed something else. Potential threat vectors, response protocols, emergency deployment plans. Humanity would never be unprepared again. We're not going back to the way things were, said. We can't. We know too much now about the galaxy, about ourselves, but we can choose what we do with that knowledge. That evening, there was a ceremony at the new memorial on Earth's moon. 8 million names carved into black stone. The victims of New Soul. People came from all over human space to pay their respects. Stood before the wall looking at her daughter's name. Had been 12 years old. She had wanted to be a teacher. Now she was just a name on a wall. I'm sorry, someone said beside her. Turned and was shocked to see not a soldier. A civilian wearing simple clothes. He looked old and tired. My name is, he said. I was a military officer. I gave orders that led to many deaths. I cannot undo that, but I came to see what we did, to face it. Didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to be angry. Part of her was just tired. Why? She finally asked. Because my government told me your people were not worth considering, that you were weak and primitive. I believed them. I was wrong, and 8 million people died because of that mistake. Looked at the names on the wall. My species has been broken apart. Our empire is gone. Many blame humans for this, but I blame us. We started this. You finished it. That's how war works. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't destroy us. You could have. No one would have stopped you, but you chose differently. That means more than you know. Watched him walk away and thought about forgiveness. She wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe she never would be. But the fact that he had come here, that he had faced what his species had done, was something. In orbit, Captain was overseeing the final tests of the Glass Protocol. Transparency measures, Ambassador had called them. Humanity would broadcast its major military movements to prove they were defensive only. All systems operational, her technical officer reported. Every human military vessel will now transmit its position and heading in real time. Even the stealth ships, asked. Even those, we're making ourselves visible again, by choice. Thought about that. Making yourself visible when you could be invisible was either wisdom or foolishness. She wasn't sure which. But it was a gesture, a signal that humanity wanted to move forward, not stay locked in mutual fear. Activate the protocol, she ordered. Across the galaxy, alien monitoring stations suddenly started receiving data they had been desperate for. Human ship positions, fleet deployments, everything visible again. Some species saw it as weakness. Others understood it was confidence. Humanity was strong enough now that they didn't need to hide. Months later, the Galactic Council convened to dedicate a new project. A joint research station, built by human and alien engineers working together. It would study dimensional technology, nanotechnology, and other fields where humanity had proven expertise. Ambassador stood at the podium for the dedication ceremony. This station represents a choice, he said. We could have kept our technology secret, used it only for ourselves, but that would mean living in isolation, always afraid. Instead, we're sharing, carefully, selectively, but sharing. He gestured to the station visible through the chamber's windows. We're not sharing weapons, we're sharing knowledge, how to fold space for civilian applications, how to use nanoconstruction for building and medicine, things that help, not hurt. Chancellor floated forward. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank humanity for this gesture, and I offer an apology. We should have helped you when the threatened you. Our inaction was wrong. Yes, agreed. It was, but you're helping now, that's what matters. Later, in a quiet corner of the station, Minyu and stood together watching the construction crews work. Humans and aliens, working side by side. Do you think this will last? Minyu asked. Considered carefully. There will be lasting respect, fear-based respect, which isn't what anyone wanted, but it's stable. Both sides are scared of what war would mean now. That's not ideal, but it's a foundation. And later, what about our children? Maybe they'll build something better. We showed the galaxy our teeth. Maybe the next generation can show them our heart. But first, we had to survive. Minyu nodded. I keep thinking about the peace talks, how confident they were, how sure they were that we would surrender or die. They made a mistake, said. They thought strength meant the biggest guns. They didn't understand that strength can mean patience, planning, the willingness to become something terrifying if necessary. Do you think we'll ever be able to put down that burden, to stop being the species everyone fears? Watch the workers for a long time before answering. I don't know, but I know we'll try. We proved we could dismantle civilizations. Now we have to prove we can help build them. It won't be easy. People have long memories for things that scare them. Then we'll give them new memories, Minyu said. Better ones, it'll take time. We have time now, replied. That's what we bought. Time to figure out who we want to be. Time to prove we're more than our weapons. They stood together watching Earth rotate peacefully in space, surrounded by ships and stations and the busy traffic of species learning to trust each other again. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was better than extinction. And for now, that was enough.